this is what we used to call the loft. Okay, and up here, Van Dam, Fonzie, New Jack, they would dress up. This was their spot. It's funny how guys would stay at the same places in the locker room show after show. And anytime we brought anybody in, like Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, we'd also stick them up here too, because sometimes different building employees would be in the lower level, or people who really didn't really belong here. So we would keep anyone hidden up here that we didn't want anybody to see.
How charismatic was he before the show, getting ready, thinking of ideas on the fly?
Spontaneous. Paul would sit at that table and you could see his eyes, and he'd be looking around the room. And Paul probably had maybe 2 of the matches already booked, but they may have been the main events, the ones he advertised. And you could see him just looking around. And he'd look over and he'd say, Chris Chetty, get over here. And then maybe look around a little bit more. And he'd say, Balls Mahoney, get over here. And he'd say, you two. And as he went over the match, what really got me about Paul is he would explain the match to him. Paul would actually do the voices and be the characters. Like if Balls Mahoney, say, was going to have a high spot, Paul would actually stand up and say, you're going to do this. And he would use a different voice. I mean, it was incredible just watching him go through it. I mean, Paul lived this stuff. Mm-hmm. Then he would get done with those two, and he'd start looking again. And you could see he was just spontaneously thinking of matches and angles right on the spot. So you'd have a show with maybe 8 matches, maybe 3, maybe 4, depending if, when we got to television, maybe 4 of the matches were actually, things he wanted to get across. And maybe the other 4 he just thought of spontaneously. And the angles were unreal. I remember one time it was when the FBI were going to win the titles, tag titles. He had the FBI there, and I forget who their opponents were. And it was going to be a match where like 6 or 7 people were going to interfere. And I was involved in it because that's why I was there, referee. So to make a long story short, there was about 15 of us standing around the table. And nobody knew the outcome of the match. And Paul's going through it. You're going to do this, and you're going to do that, you're going to do this. And then Guido of the FBI, you're going to be on top of him, and the ref's going to go 1, 2, 3. So at that 3, everybody standing at the table knew they were going to win the belt. Even them, they didn't know. And when he went 1, 2, 3, everybody stood up and went, wow. I mean, it was almost like a match just took place at the table. The guy was amazing. He had us all hanging on everything he said right then and there. That's how he was as a booker, a great booker. Okay, this area here is a shower area and restrooms. It was actually built for us specially because the first year of the show, if one of the workers had to go out and take a leak, you had to actually use the restrooms outside. Can you imagine you're trying to kayfabe and you're in the restroom with a handful of fans, hey, how you doing, that kind of thing. So we finally insisted about putting something in here because it's kind of hard holding it for 4 hours, So this was added after we were here for about a year. If we go downstairs, this was the actual guts of the locker room. Paul would have his table set up right here. And this was the booker's table. Paul would sit here with usually Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, or maybe Shane Douglas, and they'd all be trying to book the show, or he'd be getting different insight from other people. We had a food table right here. That's where everybody hung around. And then all the other wrestlers would basically sit around this whole room. The girls would dress. There was a room back here where you have a lot of stuff against the door now. The girls would dress in here. Then this other modern room was finally built for us after we were here for about 2 or 3 years. And Shane, Tommy Dreamer, Taz, some of the guys with, let's say, more seniority, they would dress in this room right here. But most of the guys were in here. And the funny thing about it is, this being Viking Hall, where the mummers would build all their floats, is if you came in here around the holidays, I guess maybe almost from that Thanksgiving on through New Year's, there'd be 10, 15 floats in this room you'd be dressing around. I'm talking about gigantic floats with feathers and all kinds of figures. And what used to be crazy is sometimes the guy on his way out to the ring would think of a gimmick right away. And he would grab a sword off the float, or maybe some kind of a crazy hat, and they would go out with that particular gimmick right off the float that they're going to use for the New Year's parade, a month later.
What kind of guidelines did Butchie set up for you guys for using this building?
Butchie was great. Butchie was really good. Just like today, he made us feel at home. Butchie was like that from the very beginning. He made us feel 100% at home. The only thing Butchie's only problem was tearing the building up. And of course, in the first couple of years, we used to tear walls, put our fists through the walls. I know Road Warrior Hawk, he went through the wall. We had the Harris brothers. They were constantly going through the walls. And Butchie'd repair it, and the next show, we damaged the place again. So Butchie was hot on that. But other than that, he was really great. And the only other thing Butchie didn't want language, because his employees, he had a lot of young kids that would help us set the ring up and that kind of thing. And the young kids would be in and out of here getting equipment and stuff. And Butchie was really strict on the language. He wanted the guys to kind of watch what they said with the younger kids around them. Other than that, we felt totally at home here. And any improvements we would need, once again, Butchie would try and do for us.
Is it hard to think that there'll never be another ECW show here?
Yeah. In fact, me being here today, this is the first time I've been back here, I guess, since our very last show. And when I came in with John Finnegan today, the two of us looked at each other and we said, man, what memories in this place. Yeah, and even back here, as I stand here now, I can picture where everybody sat, where I dressed. And yeah, a lot of memories, a lot of memories. I can still picture Paul being here right now, booking the show.